What would you do if the sun suddenly began to disappear in the middle of a medieval village long before science explained eclipses? Villagers believed the sky was under attack, so they rang bells, beat pots, hid their children, blessed their cattle, and prayed the darkness would pass. Tonight, we step into that strange and fearful world, where every shadow felt like an omen. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more haunting history told for sleep, relaxation and curiosity. Hey guys, tonight you find yourself at the edge of a medieval village where the road sinks under your boots, where river mist crawls over the fields, and where the last red light of evening clings to the wet thatch like a tired ember. You feel cold stone under your palm as you steady yourself beside the low bridge, smell damp straw from a cart stuck near the ford, and watch smoke gather in the rafters of cottages near the lane. Somewhere beyond the mill, monastery bells toll the hour, thin and lonely through the winter air, while horses breathe pale clouds beside a torchlit gate. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience, assuming anyone here could survive the road long enough to complain. You probably would not last a week out here, not with the mud, the lice, the suspicious bread, and the way every puddle seems personally committed to your downfall. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what the local time is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge onward as dusk leans over the village of Renford, a place of leaning cottages, thorn hedges, and narrow lanes pressed deep with cart ruts. The village sits below a low hill crowned by a timber watch cross, and beyond it, in the blue-grey murk, you see the square shoulder of a manor house and the broken outline of an old chapel tower. The bell there rings again, slower this time, and the sound folds itself into the evening like wool into a chest. You have come in with other travellers, though none of you speak much. A peddler leads a donkey hung with pots, ribbons, needles, and bone combs. A widow in a fur-lined cloak carries onions and a pilgrim badge pinned to her breast. A boy nearly grown drives 2 geese ahead of him, though the geese look as if they have more legal authority than he does. The dog that has followed you since the last crossroads trots beside your heel, muddy, rib-thin, and convinced that you are in charge of supper. At the first cottage, a woman shakes rushes from a woven mat into the lane, sweeping out crumbs, ash, and beetles with a bundle of birch twigs. She pauses when she sees you, then looks not at your face but at the sky. Her mouth tightens. Above the thatch, evening is ordinary enough with copper light under low clouds. Still, the air has the feeling people give it when they expect trouble, quiet in the wrong places, busy in the corners, full of glances. Before noon tomorrow, the peddler murmurs, though no one has asked him anything. The widow crosses herself. The gooseboy pretends not to listen and fails with great dedication. No one can quite agree whether the warning first came from the monastery, from a merchant out of the east, or from old Mother Avis, who reads weather in the ache of her knees and has been wrong only often enough to remain terrifying. But the rumour has reached every hearth the sun will be darkened. It will happen while men are in the fields and women are at their kneading boards, while cattle chew and children gather sticks. The light, they say, will thin like watered ale. The birds will quiet. The dogs will whine, and something, whether shadow, dragon, sin, star, or God's stern finger, will pass across the face of heaven. You continue down the lane, past sheep pressed close for warmth, past winter faggots under dripping eaves, past a little shrine built into the wall where someone has tucked rosemary beside a chipped saint with no nose. A beeswax candle burns there, expensive enough that its flame feels almost noble, and beside it sits a crust of coarse bread marked with a cross. Some swear that bread blessed before a darkening of the sun keeps sickness from the household. Others say it only keeps mice interested in theology. Even now, it is hard to tell whether faith begins in hope, hunger, fear, or simple habit, because in Renford all four sleep under the same wool blanket. The village green opens before you, damp and churned by hooves. At its centre stands the old elm where notices are nailed and punishments remembered. Nearby, two women fill wooden buckets while whispering, one in faded teal, the other in russet wool darkened with mud. You catch only enough to learn that tomorrow some mirrors will be covered, and some households, having no mirrors, will cover their best pans instead. Their voices fade behind you, but the thought remains. Tomorrow, metal bowls may be turned face down, shiny knives wrapped in linen, infants kept from windows, and cows marked with soot crosses, so no wandering ill luck mistakes them for unattended property. The details vary from cottage to cottage, as customs often do, because memory is a muddy road and everyone claims their grandmother knew the safer path. By the alehouse door, rushlight spills through a horn-paned window, dull and amber. You smell malt, wet wool, smoke, garlic, and pottage thickening over the hearth. A man with hands like root knots stands outside repairing a broken cartwheel. He spits thoughtfully into the mud, because medieval engineering sometimes includes ceremony. When the bell tolls again, he mutters that the sky has been strange for 3 days, which is what everyone says when trouble is scheduled. You duck beneath the low alehouse lintel and find warmth folding around you, though warmth here is a generous word for air argued with by fire. The rafters are soot black, the floor strewn with rushes, and a long table rests on trestles near the wall. Bowls of pottage steam beside trenchers of coarse bread. A fish hangs smoking above the hearth, slowly becoming both supper and atmosphere. The alewife sets a wooden cup before you without asking. The ale is small, cloudy, and safer than the well water, though it tastes faintly of bread that has given up on being bread. Around you, villagers speak in low voices. A thatcher says the eclipse means war. A shepherd says it means lambs born backward, though this happened last year without help from the heavens. You sit close to the hearth and let the talk wash over you. Outside, the sky darkens by natural degrees, but everyone watches it as if it might practice early. The dog settles under your bench, sighing like a tax collector denied a fee. The half-burned candle on the alehouse shelf gutters, steadies, and gutters again. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on how fear first enters a village. Tonight, in Renford, fear arrives gently. It sits beside the hearth. It warms its hands. It listens as bells mark the dark, and it waits with everyone else for morning. The alehouse grows quieter after the last bell, not because the villagers have run out of fear, but because fear, like good cheese, deepens when left alone. You sit with your hands around the wooden cup, feeling the small warmth of the drink seep into your fingers, while the half-burned candle on the shelf leans in its pool of wax as if listening too. Beyond the horn window, Renford sinks into night. The lane becomes a strip of black mud. The cottages become low humps of thatch and smoke. The chapel tower, seen through drifting mist, keeps one pale edge of moonlight along its stones. Then the alehouse door opens, and a blade of colder air cuts across the rush-strewn floor. The parish priest steps inside, shaking rain from his cloak, though the rain has hardly begun. Father Osric is narrow, grey-bearded, and wrapped in a patched wool mantle that smells of damp stone, candle smoke, and old books. Behind him comes Martin, the parish clerk, younger but already stooped in that special way of men who spend too much life bent over parchment. His fingertips are stained black with ink, and a little smear of it marks one cheek, making him look as if a crow has tried to correct him. The villagers make room without being asked. Even the goose boy stops pretending not to listen. Father Osric nods to the alewife, accepts no cup, and settles by the hearth with the seriousness of a man carrying bad weather indoors. Martin unwraps a bundle from beneath his cloak. Inside are folded scraps of parchment, a small wax tablet, a cord for measuring shadows, and an almanac so worn at the edges that it looks as though generations of worried thumbs have tried to rub the future out of it. He places them on the table. The dog under your bench lifts its head, decides the papers are not edible, and returns to its private disappointment. You lean closer, not too close, because parchment, like noble pride, does not enjoy being breathed upon by strangers. Father Osric traces a finger across the almanac while Martin holds the candle near. The flame makes the ink shine brown-black. There are little marks for feast days, fast days, unlucky days, saints' vigils, moon changes, and notes written in a crabbed hand by someone who had very little room and even less mercy for future readers. The priest murmurs names as he reads Saint Agatha, Saint Scholastica, Saint Blaise, whose blessing is said to guard throats from fish bones and other sharp inconveniences. A woman at the table touches her neck at once, because even ordinary supper can become a theological hazard. "Noon," Martin says softly, "or near enough." "Near enough," Father Osric replies, which in a village is often the difference between calm and everyone screaming into a bucket. No one can quite agree whether the priest truly understands the heavens or only understands enough Latin to frighten everyone politely. Still, he has the almanac, and the almanac has marks, and marks on parchment carry a weight mud-stained people rarely challenge. The thatcher asks whether the sun will vanish entirely. The shepherd asks whether ewes should be kept indoors. A widow asks whether she must cover the holy image above her bed, or leave it uncovered so the saint may see what is happening. Father Osric closes his eyes for a moment. Not in prayer exactly, but in the weary pause of a man asked to manage both heaven and livestock. The sun belongs to God, he says, not to dragons. This settles nothing, because everyone has already heard about dragons. Martin, perhaps unwisely, adds that in some old books an eclipse is described as a shadow moving between the lights of heaven. A few people look relieved, others look more frightened, because a shadow that can climb into heaven sounds worse than a dragon, which at least has the decency to be shaped like something. The alewife folds her arms and says her grandmother beat a brass pan during the last darkening and the sun returned, which is evidence difficult to refute at a trestle table. Some swear that when the sky darkens at the wrong hour, wells taste bitter, milk turns, and unborn calves twist in the womb. Others whisper that if a pregnant woman looks straight at the eclipse, the child may be born marked by the sky, with a dark patch, a strange eye, or a restless spirit. Father Osric says this is foolishness. Then, after a pause, he advises women with child to remain indoors anyway, which is the sort of compromise that keeps a priest employed. You watch Martin make notes on the wax tablet. He writes with careful strokes, his lips moving faintly as if each word must pass through him before landing. Tomorrow, the chapel bell is to ring when the darkening begins. The villagers are to gather if they wish, though not in panic. Fires may be lit, but not in the wheat stubble. Children are not to be told that wolves live in the sky. No one is to throw knives upward, an instruction that feels worryingly specific. The peddler nods gravely, as if crossing sky knives from his business plan. Father Osric asks who has beeswax candles to spare. Only 3 hands rise. Beeswax is costly, cleaner and sweeter than tallow, and usually saved for holy days, deathbeds, or moments when someone important wants God to notice the lighting. The poorer folk have rushlights, peeled rushes soaked in fat, smoky and brief, burning down quickly between finger and prayer. Martin records the names of those who can bring candles to the chapel before dawn. Then the priest unwraps a smaller cloth. Inside lies a little reliquary of dull metal, set with a cloudy glass stone. It is said to hold a thread from the cloak of St. Cuthbert, though those who tell the tale never fully agree whether it is truly saintly cloth, a shred of old altar linen or something cut from a bishop's sock in a moment of ambition. Still, the villagers bow their heads. Even a doubtful relic is better than no relic when the sun has an appointment with darkness. Father Osric says the reliquary will be placed on the chapel altar at sunrise. Those who fear sickness may touch the steps, not the relic itself. Those who have quarrelled should make peace before the eclipse, if only because heaven should not have to look down on the same argument twice. This causes several couples to stare into the fire with sudden interest. You rise with the others when the priest leaves. The alehouse empties slowly into the wet lane, each person carrying away a portion of the warning. The bell tower stands darker now, its stones slick with mist. Martin passes you at the door, clutching his parchment beneath his cloak. For a heartbeat his ink-stained eyes meet yours, and he gives a tired, crooked smile. "Near enough noon," he says. You step back into the cold, with mud on your boots, smoke in your cloak, and the old uncertainty of the sky pressing gently above the village roofs. You follow the lane after Martin's crooked smile has vanished into the mist, and Renford seems to draw itself tighter around you. The cottages lean close, their thatched brows dripping with the slow rain, their small windows glowing like banked coals under horn and oiled cloth. Smoke lowers over the roofs and gathers in the bare branches, and the chapel bell, quiet now, leaves behind a memory of sound in the damp air. You hear the soft slap of your boots in mud, the creak of a shutter, the cough of a cow behind a wattle fence. The dog pads beside you as if appointed by the parish to supervise your survival, though his main duty appears to be sniffing every doorway with solemn expertise. The warning has gone ahead of you. It has slipped beneath oak doors, around hearthstones, through cracks in shutters, and into the hands of women tying knots, men fetching iron, children hushed beside rush-strewn floors. In the first cottage, you see a mother standing on a stool, fastening a bundle of herbs above the lintel. The bundle is tied with red thread, bright as a berry against the smoke-dark wood, rosemary, rue, and a few dry sprigs of saint. John's wort hang together, brittle and fragrant. Some swear that yellow flowers gathered near midsummer hold a little of the sun inside them, enough to call the light back if darkness grows too bold. No one can quite agree whether the flowers must be picked before dawn, after Mass, or while saying no word at all, which makes the custom difficult for people who enjoy instructions. Inside the cottage, the air is warm and close. Rushes cover the beaten earth, and a pot of thin pottage murmurs over the hearth. 2 small lamps smoke on a shelf, while wool stockings dry from a line. The mother's hands are red from washing, and she knots the thread 3 times, each knot pulled tight with a whispered prayer. Her husband stands beside the door holding an old horseshoe, black with age and bent at one nail hole. He lifts it and considers which way it should face. Ends upward, says his wife, to hold luck. Ends downward, he replies, to pour blessing. They stare at each other as if this debate has survived longer than some kingdoms. You wisely say nothing. Medieval households are held together by bread, smoke, patience, and arguments about objects no one dares throw away. At last they hang the horseshoe upward, though the husband turns it slightly when his wife looks away. You notice, and so does the dog. Neither of you reports it. In the next cottage, an old woman sits by the fire with a basket of scraps in her lap. Her name, someone tells you, is Mother Avis, and she is the one whose aching knees may or may not have foretold the eclipse. Her face is folded like winter apples kept too long in the storehouse, and her eyes are bright under a wool coif. She's sewing tiny bits of parchment into cloth packets, each marked with a cross in brown ink. Martin must have written some of them, for the letters are narrow and careful, though one packet bears a blot that might be Latin, or perhaps a fly met a holy end there. Mother Avis gives one packet to a young man who has come for protection over his buyer. Another she ties to the handle of a cradle, where a sleeping infant lies wrapped in wool. Father Osric would likely frown at charms placed too near prayer, yet the villagers seem to see no sharp boundary. A blessing from the chapel, a herb from the ditch, a nail from the smithy. A verse no one can fully read. Each is another stitch in the same cloak against fear. Even now, it is hard to tell whether these people believe the charm itself holds power, or whether the tying of it steadies the hand that must endure the dark. You watch Mother Avis lick the thread, squint at the knot, and mutter that an eclipse is no time for loose work. This, at least, feels true in every century. You move on past the smithy, where the forge glows dull red behind its open front. The smith, broad as a church door and nearly as smoky, is hammering small iron nails flat on the anvil. Each strike rings into the wet night. Iron is stubborn stuff, born from earth and fire, and many villagers trust it against wandering spirits, ill luck, fairy mischief, and anything else that might dislike being reminded of hard work. A girl waits with a wooden bowl, ready to carry nails home for the threshold. Her cloak is saffron, patched at the elbows, and her face holds that grave importance children wear when entrusted with something dangerous, sacred, or likely to be dropped. The smith gives you a nod and drops one cooled nail into your palm. It is heavier than you expect, cold already in the rain. For your boot, he says, though his eyes lift toward the hidden sky. You tuck it into your pouch. You do not know whether it will guard you from darkness, but it might guard you from a loose soul, and sometimes practical miracles are the only ones that arrive on time. At another doorway, a woman smears soot in a cross above the frame. At another, a man pours a pinch of salt along the sill, careful not to waste too much, because salt is costly and fear must still keep account. In one yard, two sisters tie red wool around the horns of a sleepy cow, who accepts the ritual with the patient, insulted dignity of cattle everywhere. Some say red thread confuses harmful spirits, drawing their eyes away from warm blood and milk. Others say red simply reminds heaven where to look. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, but the thread glows bravely in the rain. By the time you reach the chapel wall, your cloak smells of herbs, smoke, wet wool, and iron. A line of villagers moves toward the door, each carrying something to be blessed: a candle, a loaf, a strip of linen, a knife wrapped safely away, a wooden spoon, a key, a newborn lamb too weak to stand. Father Osric waits inside near the altar, and Martin kneels beside him, the same ink smear still on his cheek. The little reliquary rests under a cloth, dull and quiet, trusted by some, doubted by others, needed by nearly all. You stand just outside the threshold, listening to the soft murmur of prayers. The dog sits on your foot for warmth. Rain beads on the herbs above the chapel door. Somewhere in the dark, the half-burned alehouse candle must be guttering lower, and beyond the clouds the sun waits for morning, ordinary and terrible, while the village ties its knots against the unknown. The prayers inside the chapel thin into murmurs, then into the scrape of boots and the soft coughs of people who have breathed too much candle smoke. You step back from the threshold as villagers pass you with their newly blessed burdens tucked beneath cloaks, a loaf marked twice with the cross, a strip of linen folded around a charm, a wooden spoon held as carefully as a relic, and the sleepy lamb blinking at the world with no understanding of heavenly politics. Rain has settled into a fine mist, silvering the herbs above the chapel door. The dog leaves your foot at last, circles once, and leads you down the lane as if the next item on the pilgrimage is supper. The alehouse waits with its low roof and amber window, and by the time you duck inside again, the room has gathered nearly every kind of village worry. Farmers sit with mud up to their knees. A widow warms her hands over the hearth, her pilgrim badge flashing when the flames shift. A pair of carters share a trencher of coarse bread and smoked fish, tearing it carefully because bread deserves respect even when it could be used to repair a wall. Near the chimney corner sits the suspicious monk you noticed earlier by the chapel path. Hood drawn low, fingers folded around a cup of small ale he does not seem eager to finish. No one can quite agree whether he is from the monastery beyond the ford, from a stricter house farther north, or merely a man with a shaved head and a talent for looking disappointed. Still, his presence changes the room. People lower their voices, then lean closer, which is how gossip dresses itself as caution. You take your place near the hearth. The rushes on the floor are damp at the edges from all the boots that have come in from rain, and the alewife moves among the tables with bowls of pottage thick with peas, onions, barley, and a little bacon fat if fortune has remembered the poor. Steam rises soft and earthy. A beeswax candle burns near the shelf where the half-burned tallow stump still leans from earlier, and the mixed smell of wax, smoke, wet wool. And ale makes the room feel less like shelter than a wool cloak wrapped around many nervous hearts. The talk begins with practical things, as fear often does. Will the hens stop laying? Should the mill be closed? If the sun darkens while dough is rising, must the dough be thrown out, or can a cross cut into the top save it? A miller says he once heard of a woman who baked during an eclipse and every loaf came out with a hollow centre. The alewife says hollow bread is usually the fault of poor kneading, not the firmament, and several men suddenly become fascinated by their cups. Then the widow with the pilgrim badge tells of a road near Ely where, during a darkening in her mother's youth, crows fell silent and the river turned the colour of pewter. She says the old folk beat pans until their arms shook, and when the sun returned, they found a black fish lying in the road. Some swear it was a sign. Others, she admits, thought a heron had dropped its dinner. Even now, it is hard to tell whether a miracle loses power when explained, or whether explanations simply arrive late and muddy, like travellers after sunset. The monk clears his throat. Everyone looks at him. In the old learning, he says, some men write that the moon passes before the sun. A farmer frowns. The moon is smaller. It is nearer. How near? The monk hesitates, perhaps realizing that the alehouse ceiling is too low for astronomy. Near enough. This phrase is apparently popular among educated men when the sky becomes inconvenient. Martin used it before, and now the monk offers it again, as though near enough were a bridge made of 2 planks over a very deep ditch. The goose boy, who has returned without his geese and therefore looks less official, asks where the dragon fits in. The monk sighs. The room brightens with interest, because dragons are easier to picture than the moon moving with scholarly ambition. A thatcher tells him that far to the east, people say a great beast eats the sun, and only noise can make it spit the light back out. A carter adds that his cousin's wife heard from a tin merchant that wolves chase the sun across the sky and bite it when men fail to keep holy days. The widow says she has heard it is a serpent. The alewife says that if a serpent wishes to eat the sun, someone ought to ask what size oven it owns. A small ripple of laughter passes through the room, low and grateful. It does not break the fear, but it loosens it, like a knot worked by cold fingers. You listen as stories gather and overlap. Some swear that during an eclipse, ghosts may step closer to doors because shadows forget their proper places. A shepherd claims that if you set an iron key beneath your pillow after the darkening, you dream of the person who means you harm. Mother Avis, who has entered quietly and now sits near the widow, says keys belong under thresholds, not pillows, unless you want a headache shaped like a locksmith's bill. She also says a bowl of milk should be covered, a cradle rocked gently, and every broom laid flat so no wandering spirit mistakes it for an invitation. No one argues with her. Age, like a fortified wall, discourages assault. The suspicious monk objects softly to the brooms, the milk, the dragons, and most of the room's confidence in grandmotherly science. But even he touches the little wooden cross at his belt when the wind pushes smoke down the chimney, and the candle flames bow all at once. For a moment, every face turns toward the window. Outside, the night is only night. The eclipse is still hidden in tomorrow's daylight, yet anticipation has its own weather, and it blows through the room colder than rain. You eat your pottage slowly from a wooden bowl, using bread to chase the last of it from the edges. The dog receives one suspicious lump from beneath the table and forgives the whole human race. Around you, the villagers settle deeper into talk, into memory, into the shared work of making the unknown small enough to sit beside. A half-trusted relic waits in the chapel. Red threads dry above doorways. Iron nails cool on thresholds. Somewhere, Martin's ink dries on warnings no one can fully read. When at last you leave the alehouse, the monk comes too, silent at your side beneath the low eaves. The rain has stopped. The clouds are thinning. Above the chapel tower, a few stars show themselves, distant and calm, as if they have not heard a single word. You walk with the monk beneath the thinning clouds, and the village seems wider now that the rain has stopped. The lane glistens black under the stars, every rut holding a little strip of heaven, though the mud does not appear improved by this dignity. Your boots pull free with soft, rude sounds. The dog trots ahead, nose low, as if following a scent laid down by all the worries of Renford. Behind you, the alehouse door closes, sealing in the last murmur of dragon stories, hollow bread, and Mother Avis's sharp advice about brooms. The monk says nothing for several steps. His hood hides most of his face, but you can hear the careful rhythm of his breathing. At the turning near the smithy, where the forge has gone dark except for one dull coal in the ash, he pauses and looks up toward the hill. A torch burns there beside the manor gate, wavering in the damp wind. They will be meeting still, he says. You understand without asking. The Lord's men do not sleep when the village is afraid, not because they are kinder than other men, necessarily, but because fear wanders like loose cattle, and loose cattle trample fences, fields, and sometimes the authority of those who own both. So you climb. The path to the manor rises past barns, hayricks, and a fenced orchard whose black winter branches claw gently at the sky. Your legs feel the slope. You pass a storehouse built on stone pads to keep rats from the grain, though the rats, being medieval professionals, have probably filed objections. Near the barn door hangs a strip of rowan wood tied with wool, meant to keep milk from souring and witches from borrowing the cows at night. Some swear rowan gathered during Lent is strongest. Others insist it must be cut with a knife never used on meat. No one can quite agree whether the tree itself is holy, lucky, or merely disliked by troublesome things. At the manor gate, 2 men-at-arms stand under a timber arch, wearing quilted jacks over wool and looking cold enough to regret loyalty. One holds a spear, the other holds a lantern made of pierced horn, its light falling in honey-coloured flecks across the mud. They know the monk, or pretend to, and let him pass. You follow with the quiet confidence of someone not yet told to leave. The dog slips in beside you with even greater confidence. Because dogs understand gates mainly as decorative suggestions. Inside the manor yard, the ground is packed hard by hooves. Stables line one side, kitchens the other, and from somewhere comes the smell of boiled leeks, smoke, horse sweat, and wet leather. A servant crosses the yard with an armful of firewood. Another carries a covered pail, walking carefully. Near the bakehouse, loaves cool beneath cloth, guarded from mice, children, and whatever may come with tomorrow's shadow. The meeting is held in the lower hall, not the Lord's great chamber, for Lord Edric is away at another estate and has left his steward to be important in his absence. You enter under an oak door banded with iron and step onto a floor strewn with rushes. Tallow candles burn in wall sconces, and a small brazier smoulders near the table. The air tastes of smoke and damp wool. At the far end, beneath a faded hanging of a hunting scene, stand the reeve, 2 village elders, Father Osric, Martin the clerk, the Lord's steward, and a few tenants who look as if they would rather be anywhere else, including under a collapsing roof. The steward, Master Allard, wears a fur-lined cloak and a chain at his neck. He has the smooth hands of a man who counts other people's labour, and the expression of one who believes every problem can be solved by naming a fee. The reeve, by contrast, is thick-shouldered, mud-booted, and tired. He knows which strips in the open fields flood first, whose ox is lame, whose son avoids work, and how many hens mysteriously vanish before rent day. If the steward understands authority, the reeve understands Renford. On the table lies Martin's wax tablet, a bell-rope end, 2 iron keys, and a little heap of tokens used for counting dues. Beside them rests the half-burned chapel candle brought from Father Osric's bundle, its wick trimmed for tomorrow. You notice how everyone looks at it and then pretends not to. Master Allard is speaking when you come in. The bell may be rung, but not without order. If men leave the fields too early, work is lost. If fires are lit in the wrong place, hedges burn. If folk gather at the chapel, someone must mind the market toll. The elder with a white beard snorts softly. If the sun goes black, they will not be haggling over turnips. The steward gives him a look. They often haggle over turnips during funerals. This is, regrettably, true enough to silence the room. Father Osric folds his hands inside his sleeves. The bell must ring when the darkening begins. It will call the people to prayer, not panic. The reeve scratches his jaw. Prayer is well, Father. But if all come running, who keeps the cattle from the east meadow, who watches the mill, who stops lads from throwing brands at the sky? Martin, without lifting his head, murmurs, "I've written that they must not throw knives." Brands are not knives, says one elder. They are worse when lit, Martin replies. Even the suspicious monk almost smiles. The argument moves like a slow cart with a damaged wheel, creaking from bells to fires to watchmen to tolls. The steward wants 2 men at the market gate, whether or not the market continues. The reeve wants men at the fields, the mill, and the byre. Father Osric wants enough candles for the chapel. The elders want noise allowed, because if the old ways have worked before, it seems rude not to assist the sun again. The monk quietly suggests that excessive clamour may encourage superstition. Mother Avis, who has somehow arrived behind you without making a sound, says superstition is what learned men call a custom before it saves them. No one knows what to do with that, so everyone pauses. At last a plan forms, patched together like a winter cloak. The chapel bell will ring once at first dimming, then steadily if the light fails further. Small fires may be lit in the green, but no burning straw is to be carried into fields. Pots may be beaten, but not near skittish horses. Children must stay by their households. 2 men will watch the cattle. 1 will remain at the mill. The market toll will be suspended during the darkening. A decision Master Allard accepts with the face of a man watching coins drown. The dog lies under the table and sleeps through the entire machinery of government. When you step back into the yard, the torches gutter low. The stars over the manor roof look cold and numerous. Below, Renford sleeps in patches, 1 candle here, 1 shutter glow there, each cottage holding its herbs, iron, bread, and breath. The bell rope has been measured, the watch has been named, the fires have been argued into permission, and above all this small human ordering, the sky waits, silent and unpersuaded. Before dawn, the bell wakes you. It does not ring in alarm, not yet, but in the slow, patient way bells have of reminding the living that time belongs to someone else. The sound moves through the draughty corner where you have slept in the lower hall, under a wool blanket that smells faintly of smoke, lanolin, and every traveller who has ever failed to complain politely. For a moment, you do not know where you are. Then the cold finds your nose, the rushes crackle under someone's boot, and the memory of yesterday's warning settles back over you like a cloak left damp by the fire. You sit up. The hall is dim, lit by the last weak glow of embers in the brazier and a rushlight trembling near the door. The dog is curled against your legs, having accepted you as furniture during the night. Across the room, the suspicious monk is already awake, kneeling with his hood fallen back, his lips moving in a whisper. Near the table, Martin the clerk gathers parchment, a stub of wax, and a little horn lantern. The ink smear on his cheek has faded but not vanished, as if even sleep could not fully wash away parish business. Outside, the manor yard lies silver with frost. You step through the oak door, and the air bites cleanly at your throat. The mud of last night has hardened in ridges. The cart with the broken wheel stands near the stable wall, rim white with ice, and the smith's nail in your pouch knocks softly against your knife handle as you walk. Horses shift in their stalls, breathing mist. Somewhere near the kitchen, a servant breaks skimmed ice from a wooden bucket, and the sound is sharp enough to make the dog look offended. The travellers gather by the gate in layers of wool, fur, patched cloaks, and sleepiness. The widow with the pilgrim badge is there, her badge now pinned higher on her cloak where all may see it. It is shaped like a little saint in dull pewter, though no one can quite agree whether it came from Canterbury, Walsingham, or a market stall run by a man with a very flexible understanding of holiness. Still, pilgrim badges have a power of their own. They prove you have gone somewhere, prayed somewhere, paid someone, and returned with a small piece of shine to show heaven and neighbours alike. Father Osric joins the group carrying a beeswax candle wrapped in linen. Martin carries another, thinner one, along with the folded almanac. Mother Avis arrives with a basket over one arm, and from it come the scents of rosemary, stale bread, and something bitter enough to be medicinal. 2 farmers bring a lantern. One brings an iron key on a cord, and the goose boy, now restored to authority by the return of his geese, walks at the edge of the party with a switch in hand. You leave Renford before the sun rises. The road slips east between hedges stiff with frost, then climbs toward the pilgrim way that runs past the old roadside shrine. Your boots crunch where puddles have skinned over, then sink where the ice gives way to mud beneath. The sky ahead is a deep, cold blue, lightening slowly above the black ribs of the woods. Rooks stir in the branches, muttering like monks asked to rise for matins too many times in a row. Behind you, the village roofs huddle low, each with its charm. Its covered bowl of milk, its red thread, its bread marked for safety. You walk in a loose line. No one hurries, partly because the road is treacherous, partly because people approach an omen the way they approach a sleeping lord quietly, with hope that it does not wake in a bad mood. The monk keeps beside Father Osric. You hear them speaking softly about calendars, shadows, and whether fear can become sin if given too many props. Mother Avis walks behind them and says, without raising her voice, that fear kept more children alive last winter than Latin did. Father Osric pretends not to hear. The monk hears and looks wounded in a scholarly way. The first farmhouse you pass is already awake. A woman scatters grain for hens from a wicker basket, careful to make the sign of the cross over the yard. Her husband carries hay toward a byre where cattle steam in the half-dark. One cow has red wool tied around both horns, and another bears a soot cross between the eyes, looking solemn and faintly betrayed. Some swear animals sense an eclipse before people do, that horses tremble, bees return to their hives, and hens tuck their heads as if night has made a mistake. Others say animals are simply better at noticing when humans have begun behaving strangely. The road bends by a frozen ditch, and there, under a thorn tree, stands a little wayside cross. Someone has hung a strip of cloth over one arm, and a few coins lie at its base, green with age and hope. Father Osric pauses. Each traveller bows or crosses themselves. Martin lights the thinner candle from the horn lantern, shielding the flame with his ink-stained hand. The small light flutters in the dawn wind, golden against the blue cold. The widow touches her pilgrim badge, then touches the stone of the cross. For safe light, she whispers. No one can quite agree whether roadside shrines protect the road, the traveller, or merely the memory of someone who once died there and is now expected to be useful. This one is said to mark the place where a blind piper found his way home during a storm by following bells no one else heard. Some swear it was a miracle, others say his dog led him. The dog beside you sniffs the stone and seems willing to accept either version, provided the piper shared breakfast. You continue toward the larger shrine beyond the fields, where pilgrims sometimes leave pins, bent coins, ribbons, and little wax figures shaped like eyes, hands, or aching feet. Wax offerings are common enough a person gives the shape of what troubles them, hoping the saint will notice the model and repair the original. Mother Avis has brought a twist of wool and a crust marked with 3 crosses. Martin carries a list of names from those too old or sick to walk. The clerk's breath clouds over the parchment as he checks them, murmuring each one as if the sound itself might help carry them. At last the sun rises pale over the winter fields. It looks ordinary. That is the unsettling part. It slides above the hedgerow, thin and gold, touching frost on grass, smoke from distant chimneys, the wet backs of geese, the stiff fingers of travellers holding candles and charms. The light returns to the world as if nothing strange has been promised. For a moment, even the talk fades. You stand on the pilgrim road with cold hands, muddy boots, a sleeping village behind you, and the bright face of the sun ahead. Knowing that before the day is much older, everyone in Renford will look upward and wonder whether all these small human preparations have been enough. You remain on the pilgrim road until the sun has lifted clear of the hedges, and for a little while the world almost persuades you to trust it. Frost loosens on the grass. The geese complain at the ditch with renewed confidence. Smoke rises straighter from distant cottages, and the pale gold of morning gathers on the road, on the thorn branches, on the waxy pilgrim offerings left by the shrine. Father Osric finishes murmuring the names from Martin's list, and Martin folds the parchment carefully, as though the sick and the old might fall out if handled too roughly. Then the group turns back toward Renford, because fear may climb toward heaven, but breakfast still waits below. The road down to the village is busier now. A cart creaks ahead of you with sacks of onions, a basket of leeks, and 2 hens tied by the feet, hanging upside down in a state of philosophical insult. A woman in a teal cloak carries eggs in straw. A charcoal burner comes out of the woods with black dust in every crease of his face, making his eyes look bright and startled. He nods toward the sun without speaking. No one needs him to explain. The light is still full, but it has a thinness to it. Or perhaps everyone only imagines it because they have been warned. No one can quite agree whether omens change the air before they happen, or whether people simply breathe differently while waiting for them. Either way, the morning feels carefully held, like a bowl filled too close to the rim. As you approach Renford's market square, the village wakes into motion. Stalls are being set up beneath patched awnings. Boards are laid across barrels. Wicker baskets appear full of turnips, apples shriveled from winter storage, bundles of onions, dried beans, and rough brown loaves with flour still in their cracks. A fishmonger arranges smoked fish on a cloth, the smell sharp enough to remind every passer-by that the river has opinions. The peddler from yesterday opens his pack and hangs ribbons, pewter pins, needles, combs, and small round mirrors polished until they catch the pale sun. At once, a woman hisses at him to cover the mirrors. He blinks. They sell better uncovered. They catch what looks into them. So do eyes, he says. Cover them too, then, if you've no sense. The peddler considers the crowd gathering around him and, with the calm wisdom of a man who enjoys profit more than argument, drapes a strip of linen over the mirrors. Some swear that during an eclipse, mirrors may trap the darkened sun, or draw sickness into the house, or show the face of whoever will die before next winter. Others say shiny things simply make people uneasy when heaven is already doing too much. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the covered mirror guards the soul, the household, or the merchant from being blamed for weather. Near the baker's stall, a girl uses a knife to cut small crosses into the top crusts of loaves before setting them out. The baker, broad-armed and dusted white to the elbows, mutters that bread marked before baking is best, but bread marked after baking is better than bread not marked at all. Beside him, his wife wraps a cloth around the blade and sets it under the table, because bare knives are unlucky during a darkening. A blade, she tells a customer, should not flash at the sun when the sun is weak. The customer nods gravely, then tries to bargain down the price of 2 loaves. proving that terror has limits but thrift is immortal. You pass a stall where a scale hangs from an iron hook. The merchant, a narrow man in a russet cap, lifts the balance and whispers over it before weighing salt. He places a little crumb of blessed bread beside the weights. Market scales are already objects of suspicion in ordinary weather. Every village knows a trader whose thumb is heavier when measuring grain than when crossing himself. Today, the merchant insists the crumb keeps false measure away while the sky is troubled. A farmer says it is clever to make bread guard honesty after charging 3 hens for salt. The merchant pretends not to hear, which may be the oldest commercial custom in Europe. At the edge of the square, Father Osric stands near the chapel gate with the reliquary under a cloth. He does not display it yet. Martin sits on a stool beside him, writing names of those who bring candles or offerings, wax, linen, herbs, pennies, 1 bent nail, and a little carved wooden sun from a child who refuses to explain whether it is a gift or a replacement. The suspicious monk watches from the wall with folded hands, looking troubled by the crowd's mixture of prayer and shopping. Mother Avis, beside a basket of bitter herbs, sells small bundles tied with a red thread and tells each buyer not to chew them unless they enjoy learning regret by taste. The market bell rings once to open trade. The sound travels over the stalls, mild and ordinary, yet every face turns upward afterward. The sun remains uncovered. Birds hop in the thatch. A dog barks at nothing and is joined by your muddy companion, who appears to believe barking is a communal craft. For a few breaths, the square relaxes. Then a cloud passes. Only a cloud, thin and grey. But the light cools, and every hand pauses. The fishmonger stops arranging fish. The baker freezes with the loaf in each fist. A child grips his mother's skirt. The peddler's donkey brays at exactly the wrong moment, and half the market gasps as if some beast of heaven has cleared its throat. The cloud moves on. Sunlight returns. Several people laugh softly, embarrassed and relieved. The donkey receives a look from the alewife that suggests it would make poor stew but satisfying justice. You buy a small piece of coarse bread and a strip of smoked fish. The bread is hard, the fish salty, and together they are comforting in the plain way of food that asks nothing of you except teeth. You eat while leaning against the chapel wall, watching villagers continue their careful preparations. A woman covers a bowl of milk with linen. A man turns his shiny belt buckle inward. 2 boys are told not to look directly at the sun and immediately begin negotiating what counts as directly. An old shepherd rubs ash on his staff and says his grandfather did the same when the light failed in the year of the great hail. No one remembers the great hail except him, but no one wishes to invite it back by doubting. By late morning, the market grows strangely hushed beneath its own noise. Trade continues. Onions are counted. Tolls are argued, bread is wrapped, and ale is carried from the tavern in covered jugs. Yet every bargain tilts toward the sky. Every laugh ends early. The pale light seems thinner now, though the sun still shines above the chapel tower. You feel the smith's nail in your pouch, the warmth of bread in your palm, the dog pressed against your boot. Somewhere nearby, the bell rope waits in the tower, and Martin's ink dries beside the names of the fearful and faithful alike. Renford keeps selling, praying, covering, counting, and watching, because daylight has not yet broken, but everyone can feel the hour drawing near. By the time the market begins to fold itself into silence, Father Osric leads a small party toward the monastery beyond the ford, and you go with them because every village road now seems to tug you onward by the sleeve. The sun stands higher than before, bright yet somehow fragile, its light laid thinly over roofs, carts, and frost-soft fields. Behind you. Renford continues its nervous work, women covering bowls, men turning blades inward, children being warned not to stare and therefore discovering a powerful new interest in the sky. The bell tower watches above it all, still and patient, with the rope hanging inside like a sleeping snake. The monastery lies a little way beyond the river, past the mill and the alder trees, where the road narrows between thorn hedges and pools of thawing mud. You follow Father Osric, Martin, the suspicious monk, the widow with her pilgrim badge, and 2 villagers carrying wrapped candles for blessing. The dog comes too, of course, though no one has invited him. He trots with the confidence of a creature who believes all roads are improved by his inspection. At the ford, the river runs dark under a skin of mist. The mill wheel turns slowly, creaking as it lifts cold water and lets it fall in silver sheets. A miller stands by the door with flour on his cap and suspicion in his eyes, watching the sky between sacks of grain. Some swear that grain ground during an eclipse will not rise properly in bread, or that flour left uncovered will gather the shadow into itself. No one can quite agree whether such flour causes sickness, sorrow, or merely disappointing pies. But the miller has covered his open bins with rough linen all the same. Practical men often mock superstition while quietly tying the knot tighter. You cross on stepping stones glazed with damp. The dog leaps first, then turns back as if judging your technique. It is not flattering. Beyond the river, the monastery rises behind a low wall of worn stone, its roofs dark with age, its chapel bell smaller and sharper than Renford's. The gatehouse arch is painted with fading saints who stare down with long fingers and solemn eyes, their halos picked out in old gold leaf. A porter opens the gate after Father Osric knocks with his staff. He is round-faced, sleepy, and wrapped in a cloak that has seen many winters and won none of them. He lets you in with a nod, though he looks at the dog and sighs the sigh of a man who knows monastery rules rarely defeat determined animals. Inside, the courtyard smells of wet stone, chopped herbs, smoke, and the faint sweet breath of beeswax. Brothers move quietly between buildings, some carrying wood, some carrying buckets, one balancing a tray of small clay lamps with admirable terror. Their wool habits are dark and plain, belted with cord. At one side stands the guest house, low and timber-framed, with a thatched roof and smoke seeping from a hole near the ridge. Beyond it, you glimpse the cloister walk and the herb garden, where winter stalks lean under beads of thawing frost. The suspicious monk is greeted by another brother, and you learn at last that he belongs here, though his name is Brother Anselm. This explains his disappointment with the alehouse, and his ability to look worried in Latin. He leads the group into the guest house, where rushes cover the floor and benches line the walls. A hearth burns low, and a pot of thin pottage waits over the coals, pale with leeks and barley. Wooden bowls sit ready beside a stack of trenchers. The room is plain, but after the road it feels nearly luxurious, which in medieval terms means the roof is not dripping directly into your mouth. You sit near the fire and warm your hands. A lay brother brings small cups of ale, weaker than the taverns and somehow more obedient. The widow thanks him and touches her pilgrim badge. Martin settles on a bench with his parchment across his knees. Father Osric speaks with the monastery's prior, a thin man with clear eyes and fingers yellowed by wax. Their voices remain low, but you catch enough: the eclipse, the almanac, the ringing of bells, the villagers' fear, the relic at Renford, and whether the monastery should lend additional candles. The prior listens without interruption. Then he orders beeswax candles to be brought from the sacristy. Not many, for the monastery is not rich, but enough to place before the altar and in the guest house windows during the darkening. Beeswax burns cleaner than tallow, and its honeyed scent is thought fitting for holy light. Some swear bees never sleep, and that they whisper among themselves the secrets of saints, kings, and households. In many villages, people tell bees when someone dies, when a child is born, or when a house falls into sorrow, lest the bees take offence and stop making wax and honey. Even now, it is hard to tell whether this is courtesy, caution, or simply an old tenderness extended towards small winged workers who keep better order than most courts. A monk enters carrying a tray of candles, each pale and smooth, each more precious than it first appears. Behind him comes another with a basket of herbs, sage, rue, betony, rosemary, and dried lavender that still holds summer faintly in its stems. The infirmera, who tends the sick, sorts them on the table. He says betony is good for the head, rue for protection, sage for many things depending on who is talking, and lavender for the comfort of rooms where fear has made the air too tight. He also has little packets of fennel seed which he says settle the stomach, though he admits that no herb fully cures the feeling of watching the sun disappear in the middle of dinner. Martin writes this down, perhaps because clerks love a useful sentence, perhaps because he is nervous. The prior asks Brother Anselm to fetch the old Eclipse note from the library chest. This causes a small silence. The library chest is kept in the warmer corner near the scriptorium, where manuscripts are locked away from damp, mice, and borrowers with optimistic memories. Brother Anselm returns with a folded parchment copied decades ago by a monk now long dead. The edges are darkened. The ink has faded in places. It records a former darkening of the sun, with bells rung, psalms sung, hens confused, and one novice fainting into a basket of clean linen. The note does not say whether the novice recovered with dignity, so you assume not. No one can quite agree whether old records comfort people because they explain the present, or because they prove the world has been alarming before and continued anyway. The monastery bell rings the next hour. Its sound is thinner than the village bell but clearer, like a silver thread pulled through cold air. In the guest house, candles are set in iron holders. Bowls of pottage are passed. You eat slowly, tasting leek, salt, and smoke. The dog receives nothing from the monks, who are disciplined men, but he sits beside the widow and receives a crust from her hand, proving discipline is rarely universal. When you step outside again, the light has changed. Not dramatically, not yet, but the courtyard seems flatter, the shadows sharper along the stone wall. The chickens near the kitchen scratch, then pause, their heads jerking toward the pale sun. Brother Anselm looks up, then down at once, as if caught nearly committing curiosity. Father Osric folds the linen more tightly around the candle he carries. Martin closes the almanac. The monastery has prepared what it can: beeswax, herbs, pottage, inked memory, prayer, and locked doors. Beyond the gate, Renford waits in its fields and market square. You pull your cloak closer, feel the cold nail in your pouch, and follow the others back toward the village as the morning begins, ever so gently, to dim. You return from the monastery with the others by the river road, and every step seems to carry you closer to a waiting hush. The mill wheel still turns, but more slowly now, its wooden paddles lifting dark water with a tired creak. The miller has closed one shutter and tied linen over the grain bins, and he stands in the doorway with flour on his sleeves, watching the sun without quite looking at it. The fields beyond Renford lie pale under late morning light. Frost melted into silver dampness along the furrows. Smoke rises from cottage roofs, thin and wavering, while the chapel tower waits above the village like a finger held to the lips. The change is small at first. You notice it on the road before anyone speaks. The light loses a little warmth, as if a cloud has crossed the sun. Yet there is no cloud. The hedges keep their shape, the puddles keep their shine, the geese keep their rude opinions, but the world seems to flatten by one quiet shade. You see it on Father Osric's face. You see it in Martin's hand tightening around the almanac. You see it in Brother Anselm, who lowers his eyes at once and whispers something you cannot hear. No one can quite agree whether the first moment of an eclipse is seen by the eye or felt by the bones. Some later swear they watched the sun's rim bitten cleanly away. Others say they only felt the air change. The birds grow uncertain. The hairs beneath wool rise as if winter had reached through the cloth. For you, walking beside the ditch with mud drying on your boots, it feels like the world taking a breath and forgetting to release it. A boy runs from the village edge. It is the goose boy, breathless, red-cheeked, and suddenly without geese again. It has begun, he says, though everyone already knows. Father Osric walks faster, not hurried, not frightened, but with the firm pace of a man who must arrive before panic does. The dog breaks into a trot, delighted by the idea of movement with purpose. You follow over the last rise, and Renford spreads below you the market square half-packed, the chapel door open, villagers spilling toward the green and the fields beyond the barns. Some carry candles, some carry pots, some carry nothing but their own cold hands tucked inside sleeves. Cattle low from the east meadow, a rooster crows once, confused by the growing dimness, then seems embarrassed and stops. The chapel bell rings. One clear note rolls over the village, across roofs, through bare branches, over the muddy green. Then another, not frantic, not yet, but steady enough that every doorway answers. A woman pulls her child close beneath a russet cloak. A man sets down a basket of onions in the mud and forgets it entirely. The baker's wife comes out with flour on her cheek, holding a loaf marked with a cross. Mother Avis stands near the chapel wall, her basket of herbs over one arm, looking at everyone except the sun. You move with the crowd toward the fields, because the sky feels larger there and because people in fear prefer company, even when company has no better idea what to do. The open ground beyond the barns is churned by hoof prints and bordered by winter stubble. Villagers gather in uneven clusters, wool hoods drawn up, faces lifted and lowered again. Father Osric warns them not to stare too long, and immediately half of them begin glancing in short, guilty pieces, as if stealing crumbs from heaven's table. You look only briefly. The sun is still bright, but one edge is no longer round. A dark curve has entered it, smooth and impossible, as though some unseen mouth has taken the smallest bite from a golden coin. Your eyes water, and you look away at once, down to the field, to the frost-wet grass, to the dog pressed against your boot. The darkness is not yet dark, but now it has a shape. Some swear that this first bite is the most dangerous moment, when whatever power crosses the sun is hungry and searching. That is why bowls are covered, knives wrapped, infants shaded, and milk hidden from the open air. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the danger falls from the sky, rises from the earth, or slips sideways out of shadows that briefly forget their owners. Still, all around you, small protections appear. A woman draws her shawl over a cradle basket. A shepherd touches the soot cross on his staff. The smith takes an iron nail from his pouch and holds it in his fist. You feel your own nail there too, cold and solid, and close your fingers around it without quite meaning to. The bell continues. Its sound joins others now, the monastery bell across the ford, thinner and higher, the manor's small alarm bell, late but eager, a handbell from somewhere near the market, the nervous clank of a bucket dropped by the well. Birds lift from the thatch in a scattered burst, circle once and settle again too soon. Chickens shuffle toward their roosts. The cattle in the meadow press closer together, steaming in the chilled air, even the geese, returned by some miracle of bad temper, stand with their long necks raised, silent for perhaps the first time in their lives. The silence of geese frightens the villagers more than the bell. The light thins further, faces lose their colour. The saffron cloak of the girl from the smithy turns dull ochre. The red threads tied to cow horns and cottage doors seem darker, almost brown. Shadows sharpen under carts, beneath hedges, along the chapel stones. You smell damp wool, trampled grass, smoke from the green, and pottage left too long over hearths because no one has remembered dinner. Somewhere a baby begins to cry, not loudly, but with a startled complaint of someone who has received no explanation for the sky. Father Osric raises the beeswax candle brought from the monastery, though it is not yet dark enough for its flame to matter. Martin stands beside him with the almanac clutched to his chest, ink-stained fingers pale. Brother Anselm murmurs a psalm. Mother Avis mutters something older, or perhaps only practical, and tells a young woman to keep the baby's head covered. The first pan rings from the edge of the crowd. It is a small sound, uncertain, struck once by someone who cannot bear waiting. Then another metal note answers from the village green. A dog barks. Your dog barks back, loyal to noise if not doctrine. The bell keeps tolling, steadier now, and Renford trembles at the edge of its own response. The sun's bright face is more deeply bitten. The field grows colder beneath your feet. You stand among villagers, cattle, candles, charms, and muddy hope, while above you daylight begins to fail by degrees, and every heart listens for what the sky will do next. The first pan rings again, louder this time, and the sound seems to give permission to every frightened hand in Renford. A woman lifts an iron ladle and strikes the bottom of a cauldron with such force that the ladle bends. A boy beats two pot lids together, his face pale beneath a wool cap. From the alehouse door, the alewife emerges holding a brass basin like a shield, and when she strikes it with a fire poker, the note shivers across the field, thin and fierce, as if metal itself has decided to argue with heaven. The bell answers from the chapel tower, the monastery answers from beyond the river. The manor joins late, probably because its guard has been staring at the sky with his mouth open. Soon the village is wrapped in sound bells, basins, pans, buckets, iron keys, wooden clappers, barking dogs, frightened geese rediscovering their purpose, and restless cattle in the meadow. If the sun is being swallowed by a sky beast, Renford intends at least to ruin its meal. You stand among them with the cold nail clenched in your palm, feeling each strike of sound through the ground and into your bones. The light has dimmed further. The sun, glimpsed in quick watery glances, is now a bright crescent bitten deep by shadow. The world has not become night, not truly, but it has become something no one has a household word for. Colours drain from cloaks and faces. The saffron sleeve of the smith's girl dulls to old straw. The widow's pilgrim badge glints once, then fades to pewter. Frost returns in the air, though the morning has nearly warmed. Some swear that noise frightens away the creature devouring the sun. Others insist it calls the attention of saints, angels, or God, who may have turned his face aside for reasons best left untested. No one can quite agree whether the clamour is battle, prayer, warning, or simple terror given a handle. You hear all of it at once. A farmer pounds a kettle and shouts St. Michael's name. A woman beside him whispers the Lord's Prayer. Mother Avis mutters a charm into her sleeve while glaring at anyone who looks likely to faint near her herb basket. Father Osric raises his beeswax candle higher. Its little flame, useless moments ago, now shines with a brave golden point against the grey-green light. Pray, he calls, though he does not tell them to stop the noise. Perhaps he knows better. Perhaps he has learned that a village cannot be pulled from its customs all at once, especially not while the sun is visibly losing an argument. Brother Anselm begins a psalm in Latin, his voice clear but thin beneath the hammering pans. Martin joins him, stumbling once, then finding the words. A few villagers try to follow and produce sounds that may be devotion, confusion, or both. Latin rolls oddly through the field, mingling with the clang of iron and the bark of your dog, who contributes with great conviction and no known theology. The shadow deepens. Birds vanish into hedges. Chickens crowd beneath a cart. The cattle begin to low, not loudly, but with a slow unease that passes through the villagers like a chill. A horse near the manor road jerks against its lead, and the reeve snaps at two boys to stop banging near its ears. One boy lowers his pot lid at once, the other gets in a final strike, because obedience often arrives after a farewell performance. Near the edge of the field, two men light torches from a brazier carried out of the green. The flames burn orange and smoky, bright now in the strange dimness. They wave them upward, not wildly, for the reeve has forbidden burning the hedges and everyone remembers the steward's face when property's threatened. Still, the torches make little trails of light in the air, and the villagers cheer softly when the flames rise. Some swear fire shown to the sky reminds the sun of itself. Others say it blinds the shadow. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the ritual commands heaven or comforts earth. You move with the crowd as it sways closer to the chapel wall. The dog presses against your leg, less brave now, his ears flattened. You lower your free hand and touch his head, feeling warm fur damp with mist. Around you, breath clouds in the unexpected cold. Someone has brought out a wooden clapper used during Holy Week, when bells fall silent before Easter. Its dry rattling cuts through this metallic clamour, sharp and insect-like. A child begins laughing from nerves, then is hushed, then laughs again into her mother's cloak. The sun thins to a fierce curve. For several heartbeats, Renford seems caught between day and night. The clouds, though few, darken at the edges. The river beyond the mill turns leaden. The chapel stones lose their warmth and become old bone in the failing light. You smell smoke, hot iron, damp wool, trampled grass, and the bitter herbs crushed beneath Mother Avis's feet. A taste of metal sits on your tongue, though perhaps that is only fear borrowing flavour from the nail in your fist. Then the bell rope pulls faster. Above you, the chapel bell breaks from steady tolling into a harder rhythm, and the village answers with everything it has. Pans roar, buckets thud, men shout saints' names, women raise candles. The alewife beats her basin as if collecting a debt from the firmament. The peddler, not to be outdone by theology, shakes a string of pewter badges until they chatter like tiny shields. Even Brother Anselm lifts his voice louder, and if he disapproves of the pots, he wisely saves the sermon for a time when the sky is not behaving so persuasively. You do not shout, you listen. The noise becomes a rough shelter, a roof made of sound beneath a wounded sun. Each person adds what they have: iron, wood, prayer, breath, memory, foolishness, hope, the old, the young, the doubtful, the devout, the practical, the terrified, all beat back the dark in the only ways they know. And then, so slowly that no one trusts it at first, the light holds. The shadow does not deepen, the sun remains bitten, but not devoured. Father Osric lowers the candle a little. Martin stops mid-word and stares at the ground, as if afraid to look up. Mother Avis raises one finger for silence, though naturally no one obeys her quickly. The pans continue, softer now, uncertain. The bells still ring, but their rhythm loosens. Somewhere, a rooster makes a cautious sound and regrets it immediately. You stand breathing the cold field air, the nail warm now from your hand, while Renford listens beneath its own fading clamour. The sky beast, if beast there is, has paused, or the moon has crossed its appointed path, or the saints have heard, or the pots have done their ridiculous necessary work. Those who tell the tale will never fully agree, but in this moment, beneath the dim sun and the trembling bells, everyone waits for daylight to decide. The noise fades by handfuls, as if the village is too tired to let it go all at once. One pot still rings near the green. A bell still swings in the chapel tower, slower now, each note falling into the dim air like a stone into deep water. The alewife lowers her brass basin and shakes out her aching wrist. The pedlar gathers his jangling pilgrim badges against his chest, perhaps relieved that salvation has not damaged the merchandise. Around you, villagers keep looking upward in quick glances. Never long enough to anger Father Osric, always long enough to see that the bright crescent remains, thin but steady. The sun is not whole, but it is not gone. That seems to change the shape of fear. The shouting spirit leaves the crowd, and a quieter one takes its place, the kind that goes indoors, checks the cradle, touches the bread, counts the animals, and asks whether the milk is covered. Mother Avis, who has been waiting for this very moment with the patience of a spider in a doorway, begins sending people back to their homes. Not all danger stands in the field, she says. No one can quite agree whether this is wisdom, superstition, or simply her preferred method for reducing crowd size. Still, people obey. They drift from the field in clusters, carrying their pans, candles, torches, children, and unfinished prayers. You follow a family down the muddy lane, the dog at your heel and the iron nail still warm in your palm. Behind you, Father Osric keeps the candle lifted near the chapel door, while Brother Anselm and Martin continue their murmured psalm, quieter now, like a thread being wound carefully back onto a spindle. The first yard you enter belongs to a cowherd and his wife. Their byre is low and warm, roofed with thatch and smelling richly of hay, dung, old straw, and animal breath. After the strange cold in the field, the heat of the animals feels almost like mercy. 3 cows stand in the dimness, red thread tied around their horns, soot crosses marked between their eyes. One calf, thin-legged and soft-nosed, nudges its mother's flank, uninterested in the heavens except as they relate to milk. The cowherd dips his fingers into a wooden bowl of water Father Osric blessed at dawn, and flicks it over the animals. The drops shine briefly on dark hides. His wife follows with a sprig of rosemary, brushing each forehead and muttering that no shadow should sour the milk. Some swear cows exposed to eclipse light give bitter milk for 3 days. Others say the butter will not come, no matter how long a woman churns, unless an iron key is dropped into the cream, even now. It is hard to tell whether anyone has tested this properly, because when butter fails, everyone prefers blaming the sky over admitting the churn was cold. You stand near the door as the cowherd's wife covers the milk pails with linen. She sets a little cross of straw on top of each cloth, then places a nail beside the largest pail. The nail is not for piercing anything. It simply lies there, dark and heavy, keeping company with the milk. Medieval protection often looks like clutter to the untrained eye iron on the sill, salt in the corner, herbs over the door, a saint painted above the bed, and enough knots to trap either demons or laundry. From the byre you pass into the cottage itself. The doorway's low, and you duck beneath a lintel hung with rue and red thread. Inside, the rushes on the floor crackle under your boots. A fire burns low on the hearth, and above it hangs a pot of pottage gone thick while everyone was out saving the sun. The room is dim enough that the covered window glows only faintly around its cloth. A cradle stands near the bed, its hood drawn, its wool blanket tucked over a sleeping child whose cheeks are warm from the fire. The mother moves to the cradle at once. She does not lift the cloth, only lays her hand upon it and rocks it gently. Some swear infants must not be exposed to eclipse light, lest they grow restless, marked, or prone to wandering in their sleep. Others say a baby who sleeps through the darkening will grow calm and lucky. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, which must be tiring for babies, who already have enough to manage with teeth, hunger, and being dressed like small bundles of laundry. Mother Avis enters behind you without knocking, because old women in villages operate under a different treaty with doors. She inspects the cradle, the herb bundle, the covered milk, and the hearth. Then she nods, which produces visible relief in the mother's shoulders. Father Osric may guard the soul, but Mother Avis guards the practical borderland where milk turns. Children cough, and hens refuse their duties. On the table lies a round loaf of coarse bread. Its crust is marked with 3 crosses cut deep by a knife now wrapped in linen and set safely away. The cowherd's wife turns the loaf so the crosses face the covered window. She has hidden another smaller loaf beneath an overturned wooden bowl. This, she tells you, is for after the light returns fully. Bread kept hidden during an eclipse is said to carry a little preserved daylight inside it. A slice given to a sick child, a weak calf, or a man with a winter cough may strengthen them. Others say it should be crumbled into the first spring furrow to protect the wheat. The cowherd says it tastes like any other bread. His wife replies that this is because he chews without reverence. You accept a small piece from the marked loaf. It is hard, sour, and warm at the centre. You eat it slowly, tasting grain, smoke, and salt, while the dog sits with shining eyes and performs starvation so convincingly that even Mother Avis gives him a crumb. The light outside shifts again, not brighter yet, but less strange. You notice it where the cloth over the window glows at the edges. The mother notices too. She looks toward the cradle, then toward the milk, then toward the loaf, as if checking whether each small defence still holds. Beyond the cottage walls, Renford has become a village of soft sounds, cattle shifting, women murmuring prayers, men hanging pots back on hooks, children being scolded in whispers for trying to peek through shutters. You move from house to house with Mother Avis, seeing the same fear dressed in different customs. In one cottage, a woman lays broom straw flat beneath the bed. In another, A man turns every stool upside down to confuse wandering misfortune, though it mainly confuses his wife. At a third door, a shepherd rubs ash onto a lamb's ears and says his grandfather did it, which remains the strongest evidence known to family tradition. By the time you return to the lane, the bell has nearly stopped. The sky is still dim, the sun still wounded, but the village is breathing more evenly now. Its loud courage has become quiet, tending animals blessed, babies covered, bread hidden, milk guarded, herbs drying above doors. You keep walking with the dog pressed near your boot, carrying the warmth of the cottage hearth and the taste of marked bread, while overhead the shadow begins, almost kindly, to loosen its hold. You leave the cottages while the light continues to loosen from its strange grey grip, though not yet enough for anyone to trust it. The lane is quieter now, as if Renford has tucked its loudest fear beneath blankets and gone about checking smaller things. Pots hang again from hooks, brooms lie flat under beds, milk pails sit covered beneath linen and straw crosses in one window. You see the dim glow of a candle burning before a painted saint whose face has been touched so often that the nose is nearly gone, which seems to happen to saints, kings, and anyone else placed where anxious fingers can reach them. The dog follows close, licking crumbs of marked bread from his whiskers. Behind you, the chapel bell gives one final uneven note and falls silent. The monastery bell across the ford answers once, thinner and farther away, then it too fades into the dim afternoon. The sun above the village is still partly bitten, but the bite is smaller now. Light returns in cautious pieces, a little shine on puddles, a little colour in russet sleeves, a little gold along the wet thatch. Then a servant from the manor comes running down the lane, his cloak flapping behind him. He is young, narrow-faced, and trying hard not to look frightened, which makes him look frightened with extra effort. He asks for Father Osric, then Mother Avis, then anyone who knows whether smoke from burning juniper is permitted indoors during an eclipse. Mother Avis tells him that it is permitted if the householder wants the room to smell like a nervous forest. Father Osric, arriving from the chapel steps with the beeswax candle still in hand, asks what has happened. Nothing, the servant says quickly. Only the steward asks that the relic be brought near the keep. The household is unsettled. Unsettled, Mother Avis repeats, in the tone of a woman who has seen hens show more dignity. Still, you go. The path climbs again toward the manor, the same slope you climbed the night before, but it feels different now under the wounded sun. The orchard branches cast thin, broken shadows on the frost-soft ground. The barns stand shut, their doors crossed with chalk and soot. Near the storehouse, a woman has tied red thread to the iron lock, and someone has tucked a sprig of rowan behind the hinge. Some swear grain stores must be sealed during an eclipse, lest the shadow creep into the barley and make ale sour for months. Others say sour ale comes from careless brewing, but this argument rarely comforts a thirsty village. At the gate, the 2 men-at-arms stand beneath torches burning in iron brackets, though it is still day, or it should be day. The flames look bold and unnecessary, then suddenly necessary, wavering orange against the dull light. One guard glances upward through the arch and crosses himself so quickly he nearly strikes his own chin. The other pretends not to have seen, then does the same when he thinks no one is watching. No one can quite agree whether soldiers fear omens less than farmers, or whether they merely have better practice standing still while afraid. Inside the yard, the manor household moves in a strained hush. Servants carry buckets, folded cloths, firewood, covered platters, and small clay lamps. A groom murmurs to a horse that will not settle. Chickens have retreated beneath a cart and stare out like judges. Smoke rises from the kitchen chimney, thicker than before, and the smell of boiling leeks mingles with roasted onions, wet leather, horse sweat, and the sharp green scent of juniper thrown on coals. You enter the lower hall by torchlight. It feels strange to step into flame shadow while the sun is still above the roof. The oak door groans behind you. Rushes cover the floor, though fresh ones have been scattered over the old, sweetened with herbs to mask damp and dog and mankind's long conversation with mud. Beeswax candles burn near the high table, and tallow lamps gutter along the walls. Above the hearth hangs the faded hunting tapestry, its stitched hounds forever chasing a stag through a forest that has never known weather. The household has gathered beneath it. Master Allard, the steward, stands with his fur-lined cloak fastened too neatly at his throat. Beside him sit two visiting gentlewomen stranded by the road, a young squire polishing a belt-buckle already polished past reason, and an elderly aunt of Lord Edric who seems determined to outlive every omen out of spite. Lord Edric himself remains away, yet his carved chair stands empty at the high table, broad-backed and dark, with lion heads on the arms. In that chair's shadow, the absent lord appears to watch from oak and stone, which may be even more unsettling than if he were present and complaining about accounts. The noble speaks softly, pretending calm with the dedication of people raised to believe fear is something servants should carry downstairs. One gentlewoman says the light is merely unusual. The aunt says she has seen worse in the year of the red rain, though those who tell that tale never fully agree whether the rain was truly red or only fell through dust from a far field fire. The squire laughs too loudly and drops the belt buckle. It strikes the table, bright metal ringing in the hush. Every servant in the room flinches. Near the buttery door, two maids whisper charms into their sleeves. One wears a thread of red wool around her wrist. The other has tucked a tiny packet of blessed parchment into her bodice. A cook's boy makes the sign of the cross over a tray of trenchers. An older servant presses an iron key against the doorpost, muttering that no shadow should enter where bread is kept. Father Osric sees this and opens his mouth, then closes it again. The relic in his hands is doubtful enough. Perhaps he chooses his battles. Martin stands near the hearth, writing a short note on his wax tablet, dimness lessening. Bells ceased. Household anxious. His ink-stained fingers leave a smudge on the tablet frame. Brother Anselm, who has come too, watches the arrow slits along the wall. Through them, narrow strips of sky show pale and changing. One guard keeps glancing upward through the slit nearest the door, as if the sun might sneak in from that angle and ask for surrender. Master Allard asks Father Osric to place the reliquary on the table. The priest unwraps the dull metal case with care and sets it near the beeswax candle. The cloudy glass stone catches the flame. The room bends toward it, noble and servant alike. Some trust it, some doubt it. Some only want something small and solid to look at while heaven rearranges itself. The elderly aunt reaches for a cup of warmed ale spiced with rosemary. Her hand trembles, but her voice does not. If the sun returns, she says, we shall eat. Mother Avis, who has somehow entered behind everyone, says, if it does not, my lady, the pottage will be wasted. The aunt looks at her, then begins to laugh, quietly and unwillingly. The sound moves through the hall like a candle catching. The squire smiles, a maid exhales. Even Master Allard's mouth twitches, though he may later deny it before witnesses. Then brighter light slips through the arrow slits. Not full, not warm, not yet the ordinary gold of a safe afternoon, but brighter. The guard nearest the wall looks, blinks, and whispers that the bite is passing. No one rushes to the door. Nobility requires restraint. Servants require permission. Everyone requires courage. But you feel the whole hall lean toward the returning day. Outside, Renford begins to murmur again. A rooster crows with more confidence this time. A cow lows from the byre below. Somewhere, a child laughs and is not hushed. The dog, having found the manor less generous than cottages, rests his chin on your boot and sighs. You stand beneath torch smoke, beside rushes, relic, iron keys, anxious nobles, muttering servants, and the empty lord's chair, while daylight gathers slowly against stone. The shadow has passed over field, cradle, market, chapel, and hall alike, making all ranks equally small for a while. And now, as the keep brightens one pale breath at a time, everyone waits to see who will admit they were afraid. The light comes back slowly, not as a trumpet blast or a miracle with clean edges, but as something poured with care from a cautious hand. It gathers first on the manor wall, pale along the seams of stone, then on the rushes beneath your boots, then on the cloudy glass of the reliquary where Father Osric's candle trembles beside it. The arrow slits brighten. The torches lose their bravery and become smoky sticks again. A servant near the buttery door laughs under her breath, then covers her mouth as if joy might be improper before the steward has approved it. Master Allard clears his throat, smooths his fur-lined cloak, and announces that the household has remained calm. No one corrects him, which is either mercy, politics, or the oldest form of village entertainment. The elderly aunt drinks her warmed ale with the satisfaction of a woman who has survived one more inconvenience arranged by heaven. The young squire retrieves his belt buckle and polishes it again, perhaps hoping metal forgets fear faster than people do. You step outside with the others, and the manor yard has changed. It is still muddy, still lined with stables, still full of carts, buckets, and hens who look personally offended by recent events, but colour has returned to it. The red thread on the storehouse lock is red again. The juniper smoke curls blue instead of grey. The horse near the stable tosses its head, no longer panicked, only annoyed that humans have involved the sun in stable routine. No one can quite agree whether the first true sign of safety is the brightening sky, the rooster crowing properly, or the steward remembering to complain about lost market tolls. For you, it is the dog lifting his nose, sniffing the air, and deciding the world is again suitable for the pursuit of food. You descend the hill toward Renford. The village below seems to loosen as you approach, cottage by cottage, person by person. Shutters open, cloths are pulled from windows. A woman steps into a doorway holding a covered milk pail and studies the light as if judging a servant returned late from an errand. Children emerge from behind skirts and door frames, blinking upward until mothers pull their chins down. The chapel bell gives 3 slow notes, not alarm now. But thanksgiving and the monastery bell beyond the ford answers like a thin silver echo. In the market square, the stalls look abandoned at first, then suddenly alive again. The onion cart remains where it was left, though one basket has tipped and rolled its contents into the mud like small pale moons. The baker's wife gathers her marked loaves and brushes flour from her sleeves. The fishmonger lifts the cloth from his smoked fish and sniffs them suspiciously, as if an eclipse might have opinions about herring. The peddler uncovers his mirrors one at a time, doing so with the careful expression of a man opening cages that may contain either profit or doom. Some swear mirrors uncovered too soon after an eclipse hold a shadow in their backs, and that if a vain person looks into one before sunset, they will see their own face older by 7 years. Others say this belief was likely invented by someone selling covered mirrors at a better price. Even now, it is hard to tell whether superstition follows fear, trade, or the secret cleverness of people with merchandise. Father Osric carries the reliquary back into the chapel, where candles burn low before the altar. The beeswax has softened into golden pools, and the air inside smells sweet and smoky, thick with prayers recently spoken and doubts quietly ignored. Martin sets his almanac on the small table near the wall and begins to write. You watch his ink-stained fingers move light restored, villagers assembled, bells rung, no harm seen. He pauses after that, then adds, pots beaten with zeal. He scratches it out, thinks better, and writes. Customary noise observed. Clerks are dangerous because they can make even panic sound respectable. Outside, Mother Avis declares that everyone should eat before deciding what the eclipse meant. This counsel is accepted more readily than any sermon of the day. Soon, the green fills with rough benches, upturned baskets, trestle boards, and people carrying what they have not ruined by fear. Coarse bread comes wrapped in cloth, some loaves marked with crosses, some hidden during the darkening and now brought forth with quiet importance. Smoked fish is sliced and shared. Bowls of pottage are ladled from pots rescued from hearths where they thickened almost into mortar. There are onions, dried apples, a little cheese, and jugs of small ale passed carefully from hand to hand. The ale tastes sour, smoky, and deeply reassuring, which is more than many medicines can claim. You sit near the edge of the green on a low bench that wobbles like a witness under questioning. The dog settles beneath it, receiving crusts from 3 separate households, and behaving as if this was the true purpose of the eclipse. Around you, people talk in the strange soft way of those who have just been frightened together and do not yet know how proud to be. The thatcher says his pan-ringing saved the sun. The alewife says his pan-ringing mostly saved everyone from hearing his opinions. The shepherd claims the geese knew the light was returning before anyone else. This is doubted by several people, especially the goose boy, who says the geese know many things but share none of them for Christian reasons. A little laughter moves through the green. It is cautious at first, then warmer. Not loud enough to break the day's spell, but enough to place a human hand on it. Father Osric comes among the villagers, blessing bread, touching foreheads, reminding them that mercy has been shown. Brother Anselm follows more slowly, accepting a trencher from the widow despite looking as though he intends to repent of the onions later. Mother Avis distributes bitter herbs to those with trembling stomachs, and when someone asks whether the herbs work against heavenly fright, she says they work best if swallowed and not argued with. Above you, the sun is round again. It shines over Renford with a brightness that feels both ordinary and newly lent. The wet thatch glows, the chapel stones warm, puddles mirror the sky without fear. The half-burned candle from the alehouse, now brought outside and set in a clay holder, burns its last short inch beside the bread, its little flame almost invisible in the restored day. You eat slowly, bread in one hand, smoked fish in the other, ale warming your chest. Around you, villagers begin turning terror into tale, mistake into proof, noise into courage, and confusion into custom. The shadow is gone, but it has left behind a strange tenderness, as if for a little while every person here has remembered how small a village is beneath the heavens, and how good it is to sit together afterward under light that has returned. By late afternoon, the feast on the green thins into crumbs, damp rushes, empty bowls, and the soft heaviness that follows fear when it has spent itself. People begin to carry trestle boards back indoors. The baker's wife wraps the last marked loaves in linen. The fishmonger counts what remains of his smoked fish with the mournful care of a man who suspects both heaven and neighbours of theft. Children chase each other between the stalls until they're caught by sleeves and sent to fetch buckets. Because even after the sun nearly vanishes, someone still has to bring water. You linger near the chapel wall while Father Osric returns the reliquary to its cloth, and Martin finishes his account in careful ink. The half-burned alehouse candle has died at last, leaving a small curl of smoke above its clay holder. The dog sniffs it, sneezes, and looks betrayed by wax. Brother Anselm stands nearby with his hood lowered, watching Martin write. He no longer looks quite so suspicious, or perhaps you have grown used to his face. Some men are born looking as if they have just found an error in a psalm. As evening gathers, a few travellers prepare to leave Renford by the pilgrim road before the ground hardens again with night frost. The widow with the pewter badge asks whether you will come as far as the roadside shrine, where people often camp beside the thorn tree. Father Osric advises against walking too far after dark. Mother Avis advises carrying bread, salt, and a piece of iron. The Reeve advises not losing the road. These counsels are all useful, though one feels more likely to keep you out of a ditch. You go with the travellers. The road beyond the village is quieter now, washed in the deep blue of winter dusk. Behind you, Renford glows in small pieces, a window here, a hearth smoke there, the chapel tower dark against the last amber edge of sky. The broken cartwheel still leans by the smithy, repaired but not yet fitted, its iron rim catching the fading light. Your boots find the ruts by habit. The dog trots ahead, pausing now and then to look back with the patience of a pilgrim guide who expects payment in crusts. At the shrine, the thorn tree stands black and tangled above the old stone cross. Someone has left fresh rosemary at its base since morning, along with a bent pin, a ribbon of faded teal cloth, and a little wax figure shaped like an eye. The fire is built in a ring of stones nearby. A carter strikes flint to steel, catching sparks in charred linen, then feeding them dry twigs until flame licks upward. Soon the small blaze warms your knees and paints gold along faces, badges, wooden bowls, and the iron hoops of travel packs. You sit with the widow, the pedlar, Brother Anselm, Martin, 2 carters, and a woman travelling to her sister's village with a basket of wool combs. Supper is simple coarse bread, a heel of cheese, a few onions roasted in ash, and ale from a leather bottle passed carefully around. One carter shares dried apples from his pouch, each slice tough and sweet as memory. Daily life, even after wonders, returns to chewing. No one can quite agree who begins the stories. Perhaps it is the widow, touching her pilgrim badge as the fire settles. Perhaps it is the pedlar, eager to make the day larger now that he has survived it. Perhaps it is the road itself, which seems to invite old tales whenever people sit beside it in the dark. The widow tells again of the pewter-coloured river near Ely, but now the black fish in the road becomes larger, nearly the length of a man's arm. The carter says he once heard of an eclipse during which a church bell rang by itself, though another traveller says the bell rope was probably caught by wind, and the carter replies that wind is often how miracles avoid boasting. Martin listens with his wax tablet on his knee, but he does not write everything. Some stories resist ink, not because they are too holy, but because they change shape when watched too closely. Brother Anselm says softly that shadows in the heavens follow courses set by God, not the teeth of beasts. The pedlar nods and says that may be so, but if God gives a village pots, perhaps he expects them to be used. Even Brother Anselm smiles at that, a small reluctant smile, like a candle lit in a narrow cell. The talk turns to relics. The widow says she once saw a church claim to hold a feather from the Archangel Michael, though the feather looked very much like it had belonged to a goose with social ambition. One carter swears that at a fair near Lincoln, a man sold splinters from Noah's Ark, all freshly cut and smelling of pine. Martin says there are rules about proper relics, seals, and witnesses. The peddler says rules are fine things, especially for men who can read them before paying. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether a false relic has no power, or whether belief itself sometimes carries a weary traveller halfway to comfort. You think of the dull reliquary in the chapel, the cloudy glass stone, the thread that may or may not have brushed a saint's cloak. You think of villagers bowing before it, not because certainty filled the room, but because uncertainty needed somewhere to kneel. The fire burns lower, sparks rise into the dark branches of the thorn tree. Somewhere far off, the monastery bell rings, Compline, faint and silver, marking the hour when monks close the day with prayer. Brother Anselm bows his head. Martin does the same, though his eyes remain half open, fixed on the flames. The dog rests with his chin on your boot, finally satisfied that the world, while unreliable, does contain onions, bread, and generous widows. Some swear that after an eclipse, dreams at roadside shrines come truer than ordinary dreams. If you sleep with an iron key beneath your cloak, you may see the next road you must take. If you place a crumb of hidden bread near the fire, a dead friend may visit kindly and ask for prayer. Mother Avis would likely argue about the placement of the key, but she is not here, and the night feels old enough to permit several versions of truth. You do not sleep yet. You sit in the ring of warmth, listening as voices soften and stories wander. The fear of the day has become something shareable now, passed like ale, shaped by each mouth, sweetened by relief. Above the shrine, the sky is clear, the moon, quiet accomplice to the day's wonder, hangs pale among the first stars. No one points at it accusingly, for tonight, at least, the moon is allowed to keep its secrets. The road darkens, the fire settles, the last stories fade into murmurs, and you feel how survival makes companions of strangers, the widow with her badge, the peddler with his covered mirrors, the monk with his careful learning, Martin with his ink-stained fingers, the carters, the dog, and you. Beneath the thorn tree beside the little shrine, the world feels wide, cold, and strangely gentle, as if the returned light has left behind one quiet gift, the knowledge that everyone was afraid, and everyone stayed. The fire at the roadside shrine has burned down to a red heart by the time the last story fades. Around you, the travellers settle into their cloaks, packs drawn close, boots turned toward the warmth. The thorn tree above the old stone cross stands black against a sky washed clean by cold, and the moon hangs there in quiet silver, innocent now, as if it has not spent the day crossing the sun's face and frightening an entire village into beating cookware at heaven. You sit a little longer, unwilling to leave the circle of embers. Martin has wrapped his wax tablet in cloth and tucked it under his arm. Brother Anselm lies with his hood over his face, though you suspect he's still awake, silently correcting everyone's theology from beneath the wool. The widow's pilgrim badge catches one last glow from the coals. The peddler has covered his mirrors again, not from fear this time, but from habit and perhaps from a merchant's instinct that uncovered things invite fingerprints. The dog sleeps across your feet, heavy and warm. No one can quite agree whether the village will remember this day as miracle, omen, lesson, or proof that the alewife owns the loudest basin in 3 parishes. By next winter, the stories will already have changed. The sun will have grown darker in the telling. The geese will have fallen silent for an entire hour. The manor steward will have stood bravely in the yard, though you know he spent most of the darkening near the reliquary pretending not to watch the arrow slits. The suspicious monk may become a wise scholar. Mother Avis may become half prophet, half storm cloud, entirely correct. And you, perhaps, will become the traveller who was there, which is the most dangerous kind of witness, because no one asks whether your boots were full of mud before turning you into proof. At last Martin rises. We should return before the frost hardens. Brother Anselm sits up at once, as if he has not been listening. The widow gathers her basket. The carters bank the fire with ash. A crust of hidden bread, left near the shrine for luck or memory, is tucked beneath a stone where some small night creature will probably receive more blessing than expected. You wake the dog with a gentle nudge, and he looks at you with the deep sorrow of one asked to abandon a successful nap. The walk back to Renford is slow and hushed. Frost silvering the grass catches moonlight along the ditch. Your breath clouds before you. Far off. The monastery bell rings again, a faint thread of sound over the fields, marking the hour when honest people sleep, and bells continue being professionally awake. The road is familiar now, the ford, the mill, the hedges, the ruts, the place where the broken cartwheel was carried for repair. The bend where you first saw the village, smoke rising under a darkening sky. Renford lies quiet when you return. Only a few windows glow. The market square is empty except for a forgotten onion frozen into the mud, waiting to become someone's morning mystery. The chapel door is barred, the candles inside burned low before the covered relic. Above cottage doors, herbs drip in the night air. Red threads hang limp. Horseshoes hold their disputed luck. Covered bowls have been uncovered. Knives unwrapped. Stools turned right side up. And brooms restored to their ordinary dignity. Some swear that after an eclipse, the first night must be kept gently, no shouting, no quarrels, no sweeping ashes over the threshold, no leaving shoes crossed by the bed. Others say people are simply tired after saving the sun and prefer customs that resemble going to sleep. Even now, it is hard to tell whether ritual follows fear or kindness, because both move softly through the same doors. Father Osric waits near the chapel wall with the last of the beeswax candle in a small lantern. He nods as you pass, too weary for sermons. Martin says he will finish the account tomorrow, when the ink is less likely to freeze and his hand is less likely to write poetry by accident. Brother Anselm murmurs good night and turns toward the monastery road, carrying his doubts, his learning, and perhaps one small private memory of villagers beating pots beneath a wounded sun. You step into the lower hall where you first woke before dawn. The rushes smell of herbs and smoke. The brazier has been fed. A wool blanket waits near the wall, rough but warm enough to count as mercy. From somewhere in the manor yard comes the soft stamp of a horse. From the kitchens, a servant whispers, then laughs quietly, and the sound folds into the darkness without disturbing it. The dog circles twice and lies down beside you. You sit for a moment before sleeping, holding the iron nail from the smith. It has done nothing you can prove. It has not fought a dragon, stopped the moon, cured sour milk, or instructed the heavens in better manners. Yet it has been in your palm during the dark field, in your pouch during the feast, and now rests beside you like a small cold promise from the earth. You set it near your blanket, close enough to touch if dreams grow strange. Outside, the restored moonlight lies on Renford's roofs. Inside, the fire lowers itself by degrees. The day's fear softens into story, and the story softens into warmth. You let your shoulders sink. The village no longer waits for the sun to fail. It breathes in sleep, under thatch and timber, under chapel stone and manor beams, under herbs, wool, smoke, and remembered bells. The rituals remain behind like footprints in mud pans struck, candles lifted, bread marked, cattle blessed, infants covered, prayers murmured, jokes made, because even terror must share the bench with supper. Nothing here has been neat, nothing here has been certain. But the people have endured the strange sky together, and in a medieval world, together is often the best shelter anyone can build. Now the hall grows softer. The brazier gives a low red glow, and the rafters above you disappear into shadow, soot dark and still. The wool blanket settles over your legs with a scratchy, homely weight. Somewhere beyond the wall, a final drop of thawed frost falls from the eaves. Somewhere farther off, the river moves past the mill in the dark, carrying moonlight in broken pieces. The dog sighs, and the sound is small, warm, and complete. You do not need to decide whether the eclipse was omen, shadow, beast, miracle, or mathematics wearing a monk's hood. You only need to rest inside the quiet that follows it. The bells are silent now. The rushes no longer crackle. The last candle leans into its wax, smaller and smaller, until the flame becomes only a golden bead, then a softer glow, then almost nothing at all. And as your eyes grow heavy, Renford drifts away from you, the chapel, the green, the muddy lane, the covered mirrors, the red thread on cottage doors, the old shrine beneath the thorn tree, Mother Avis's basket, Martin's ink-stained hands, Father Osric's tired candle, the monk's careful smile, and the moon keeping its pale watch above them all. The world outside remains cold, but here, for this moment, you are warm. You are safe enough. You have come through the darkening and found the light waiting on the other side. So let the road end here. Let the manor sleep. Let the village keep its small charms and its larger hopes. Let the last ember fold inward, red to rose, rose to ash, ash to quiet. Breathe slowly, loosen your hands. The medieval night draws its woolen cloak over the fields, over the roofs, over the tired bells, and over you.